Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Secretary Yellen. Thank you for being here this morning. Thank you also for the conversation that we had on Monday. We may not always see eye to eye on a number of the issues, but your availability was helpful in understanding and appreciating the actions of the administration. So thank you for that part.
Thank you, Senator.
I'm sure you've seen and maybe even had a big hand in proposing some of the president's budget requests. I can honestly spend hours talking about the president's budget and how much I dislike it. I think it's bad for the economy. I think it's bad for the American people. We certainly see $5 trillion of tax increases, $7 trillion of spending, the highest rate of taxes on individuals in the last 40 years, and a new corporate tax rate higher than the tax rate imposed on Chinese Communist Party on their own businesses. More and more policies that undermine our own nation's energy independence and energy security. This isn't a budget that unifies the country. This budget only seeks to isolate and divide us. This budget simply said, taxes too much and spends too much. In the midst of all this budget talk, however, we are once again having to exercise important oversight over the federal regulators and agencies responsible for ensuring they're doing the job that Congress gave them the tools to do. As such, I want to spend some time discussing Silicon Valley Bank. While there are many questions that must be answered, I do know a few things for sure. First, the bank failed because of its management and because of its board. I know that the failure of SVB also was contributed to by a lax regulatory environment. I believe that the state and federal regulators failed to appropriately use the tools they have to supervise and regulate the failed institutions. And finally, that the Biden's handling of the economy contributed to these bank failures. The president's budget is further evidence of reckless tax and spending that will only exacerbate the highest inflation we've seen in 40 years. This impact will be felt by everyone and everything from grocery bills to financial institutions. It appears that the San Francisco Fed was asleep at the wheel. They failed to meet their basic, not enhanced, but basic supervisory responsibilities and therefore missed their opportunity to use enhanced supervisory tools if necessary. Instead of taking accountability for this blatant failure, regulators are now forecasting that they plan to increase regulations on the rest of the banking industry. In other words, the banks that made responsible business decisions and have not failed. The failure to supervise is inexcusable, and I plan to hold the regulators accountable. This administration's tax and spend reckless policies fueled inflation and will only further lead to unmanageable inflation and higher interest rates. Secretary Yellen, will this administration acknowledge that their reckless tax and spending contributed to not only the challenges that we see in everyday households, but also to the challenges that we're facing today with SVB?
Look, inflation is too high, and it is the president's top priority to bring it down. And there are many contributors to why inflation is too high. Importantly, fallout from the pandemic and Russia's war on Ukraine that boosted food and energy prices. Many countries around the world suffer from the same problem, regardless of what their fiscal policy was.
Thank you. I don't want to cut you off, but I only have a minute left, and I want to just, with my synopsis, there's no doubt that the pandemic was in the rearview mirror. We saw the COVID relief response in January of 21 that spent $1.9 trillion. The only thing missing in that COVID relief bill was COVID relief, which we had 1% for COVID vaccines, under 10% for COVID-related health, but we had a lot of liberal policies embedded in the $2 trillion of spending, which then led and accelerated inflation to a 9.1% or a 40-year high. The Fed response to the high level of inflation was to have 8 rate increases, leading to a liquidity challenge that we are now seeing the results of. Thank you very much.